if she knew the whole story. I don't know how much of the story that she knew. I don't know if she knew that she would watch her son be crucified. I don't know if she had any awareness that she was going to actually watch him die.
Yeah.
I don't know how much she knew, but what I do know is that she saw her life as blessed from God.
Amen.
And she knew that she was delivering a Savior. This morning, I won't be too long with you. I think about the true meaning of Christmas. I always have to think about who Jesus is. 2 weeks ago, we talked about Isaiah's words, that Isaiah said he was the wonderful counselor. He was the mighty God. He's the everlasting Father and the Prince of Peace. And last week, we took a look at John's words in John chapter 1, where John said he is the Word from eternity, and he's also the light, and in his life. And so we looked at those things. And this morning I want to take a look really quickly at Matthew chapter 16, verse 13 through 17. It says this: Now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he was asking his disciples, who do people say that the Son of Man is? And they said, some say John the Baptist, and others Elijah, but still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. He said to them, but who do you say that I am? Simon Peter answered, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus said to him, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, because flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I look at this passage this morning, and I know this is Christmas time. I'm supposed to be reading from Luke chapter 2, right? But I look at this passage, and we've talked about this passage before, about how the church is built on the rock, and how Jesus said that nothing would overcome his church, his true body, that nothing would overcome that. But this morning I want to take a look at this one question. This one question that Jesus asked. It's actually two questions, I guess. He said, who do men say that I am? And if you look what he was asking him, he said, what's the talk on the town? What's public opinion about me? What are people saying about me? And they tell him, some say you're Elijah, some say you're John the Baptist. And the whole John the Baptist thing, Herod had John the Baptist beheaded, and Herod actually didn't know that John the Baptist and Jesus were cousins, and they had been seen together a couple of times. He didn't know any of that. And so Herod is actually the one that probably promoted this idea that Jesus was John the Baptist come back from the dead. And so some said Elijah, because Malachi chapter 4 says, Elijah will come back and all this kind of stuff. And so they thought that some rabbis at the time thought that Elijah would come in a physical body. And then some said Jeremiah or one of the other prophets. Can I tell you this morning that none of those are correct? Jesus is not Elijah. He's not John the Baptist. He's not Jeremiah. He's not Isaiah or Moses or Zechariah or one of the other prophets. He's not any of those. But this was public opinion at the time. 2,000 years later, public opinion still gets it wrong. Public opinion still gets it wrong. If you want, you can go into a room, most places, especially here in West Virginia, you can go into most rooms and you can talk about God. You can talk about God, and people are cool, right? People believe in God, and they'll talk about the generic term God. They'll talk about God all day long. It's not a big issue. But bring up the subject of Jesus and see what happens. When you make this transition from God being just God and just something out there to Jesus, things change. Things change. People get quiet, and sometimes people get angry, and sometimes, people just want to leave the room. public opinion about Jesus today is all over the place. Some people say he's the Son of God. Some people say he was a nut job. Some people say he's a myth and never even existed. If you go around where we live today, you get all kinds of opinions about who Jesus is. But Jesus turned and he asked the question. He looked at his disciples and he said, "That's great that they all say that." He said, "Who do you say that I am?" Who do you say that I am? This is a very different question. Let me ask you that this morning. Who do you say Jesus is? Quite frankly, it's really easy to sit here in the church, in the sanctuary this morning and say Jesus is the Christ. It's easy to sit here this morning and say that Jesus is the anointed one. He's the Messiah. It's easy to sit here in the church this morning and say Jesus is the Son of God. But what's really in your heart today? What's really in your heart today? Here's a reality for us. Here's a little bit of reality for us. If we believe that Jesus is really the Savior, if we believe that He's the Son of God, that we believe that He is God with us, if we believe that Jesus is who the Gospels say He is, has that knowledge changed our lives? Because if it hasn't, then we don't truly know who Jesus is. So Jesus asked him, "What are people saying about me?" And then he directed the question toward them. Who do you say I am? Jesus makes it very personal at that point in time. He wasn't asking about public opinion anymore. He wasn't asking what you've heard. He wasn't asking what you've read. He wasn't asking any of those questions. He said, "What about you?" Here's the thing. They didn't have anybody influencing them at the time other than Jesus. They went around and asked, or at least they'd heard enough, like, "Now they've got it right." You know. They had experienced Jesus. You know, if we go around the sanctuary this morning, most likely everyone here would identify Jesus as the Messiah. Most likely everyone here would identify Jesus as the Son of God. But is your belief based on public opinion, or is your belief based on actually knowing Jesus? See, maybe your family members are Christians. Maybe your mom or dad or grandma or grandpa taught Sunday school. Maybe the people took you to church when you were a kid. Maybe you heard enough about Jesus to be able to say that Jesus is the Son of God. Maybe you've even read enough about Jesus to say that He's the Son of God. But is it personal? Is it personal? Do you know Jesus, or do you just know about Jesus? Here's some things Jesus said about Himself. In John chapter 10, verse 9, He said, "I am the door. If anyone enters through me, he will be saved." In John chapter 10, verse 30 of that same chapter, He said, "I and the Father are one." John chapter 14, verse 6 is where He said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." Amen. John 14, 9, Jesus said, "He who has seen me has seen the Father." Yes. Understand that when Peter that said, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. What he was saying was, I believe in my heart that you are who you say you are. I believe that you are God in the flesh. I believe that you are the Lord who's visiting us. And I believe you are the Savior. Look at verse 17. Verse 17. I'm trying to get by itself for you. There you go. Verse 17. Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, Simon, son of Jonah, because flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. This tells us something important about knowing Him. It wasn't about what Peter heard. It wasn't about what Peter read. It wasn't about what Peter came up with in his own mind. Jesus makes a declaration here. He says, Peter, your knowledge is a spiritual knowledge. This morning I have to ask you, do you know Jesus that way? I'm not asking you if you know about Jesus. I'm not asking you if you know some of Jesus' characteristics based on what else somebody else said or what you read. Do you know Jesus in a spiritual way? Do you know Jesus beyond Christmas and Easter? Past 3 weeks, I've figured out another time. Funerals. Some people know Jesus with Christmas, Easter, and funerals. Past several weeks, I've figured out that, hey, that's another time people think about Jesus. Do you know Him beyond those things? You know, I know that Mars, the planet Mars, I know it's cold. I know its soil or whatever is a reddish color. But I've never experienced life on Mars, or if there is life on Mars. Some people say there was. Would explain where some of you came from. But I've just read that about Mars. I don't know anything about Mars. I've never been to Mars. I've never seen it. I've never set foot on Mars. Yeah. It's just what I've read, what I've heard, pictures I've seen. Some of us have that kind of knowledge of Jesus. It's what we've heard. Maybe it's what we've read. Maybe we even see it in pictures like we saw this morning. But do you know Him in your spirit? Do you know Him through a relationship with Him? Has He saved you, changed your life, changed your eternity? Or are you depending on just a little bit that you gained from public opinion? Oh, I've got some family members to talk about Jesus, so that'll be all right. This morning, I believe that the Lord wants us to know Him. And He wants us to know Him in a way that's life-changing.
Yes, amen.
He wants us to know Him in a way that's life-changing. John chapter 1, verse 12. You hear it from me a lot. John chapter 1, verse 12. It says that we've been given power to become the children of God if we believe in Jesus and we receive Him. This morning I'm going to ask you, do you believe in Jesus? What do you mean when you say believe in Jesus? Do you believe He's the Son of God? Do you believe that He died on the cross for your sins? Do you believe that He rose from the dead? That's the gospel. Do you believe those things? That's believing in Jesus. And the question is, do you receive Him? And that is, do you receive Him as your Lord? See, a lot of us want to receive Jesus as our Savior, but we don't want to receive Him as our Lord. I want to ask you that this morning. Have you received Jesus as your Savior and as your Lord? Could you all stand?